that some of these herdsmen believe that in so doing, they are carrying out the will of Allah. And so, they see this as a divine mission, one to kill, to butcher, and of course to maim. And therefore, whatever that has come to be or to become of the black African is just an outcome of the will of God. I hope that is understood. We must understand their mindset. Or somebody asked me that question the other day. He said that, why do they not just kill, but they go on to slaughter, to butcher, and even the women to rape? Then after the rape, they do what? They proceed on the butcher. And I want you to know that all that they're trying to tell you is that black people are not human beings. That is how God has ordained it. Then I say that another theoretical issue that we might understand this is that in Africa, there's a near state collapse, and this is fueled by contradictions of underdevelopment, and as a matter of fact, that has led to the emasculation and impoverishment of the African populations. And this is also fueled by primitive accumulation of African elites whose concern is not development, but whose major objective in politics is to steal money. Let me put it that way, plainly. That in Africa, since independence, the goal of politics in Africa is not to develop Africa. That the object of politics in Nigeria is not to spread development, but the object of politics in Nigeria by politicians is to steal money, public money, to leave you poor, to impoverish you further, and of course to fuel crisis in the system, crisis that can further degenerate to the collapse of the state. And I say that, when Hillary Clinton was in Nigeria, she warned Nigeria that Nigeria was fast degenerating into a near state collapse. There are good examples of state collapse in Africa. Somalia is one good example where everything has collapsed. There's no law, there's no order, there's no security, and everybody has degenerated to ethnicity and religious wars. The same thing for the Congo Democratic Republic. The same thing also in Sudan. Ethiopia was there before, but Ethiopia has been able to pull out of that degeneration. Then of course Nigeria is gradually rolling into a near state collapse, total collapse. Now when you take the herdsmen crisis in central Nigeria and other parts of Nigeria, there are clear indications that Nigeria is coming close to the idea of a state collapse, like these scholars point. So one thing I want you to understand by that theory, to explain it like I've said again, is that the object of our politician, the reason for being in politics is to steal money and it's not to develop. Another theoretical position that explains the herdsmen crisis and that of farmers, lies with the fact that some scholars have argued that the forces of production in the agricultural sector are still confined by primitive and crude factors. In other words, the farmer who goes to the farm uses a cutlass and a hoe, and he's bending under the sun, under the scorching heat of the sun. And the Fulani herdsman, or whatever nomadic herdsman, also roams about with cattle everywhere. And of course he also is exposed to the harshness of nature. Agriculture in Nigeria and largely Africa, is still depending on crude forces of production. The fisherman that does fishing still uses a hook, and a boat. But in the Western world, in Europe and America, a farmer sits on a tractor or a farmer uses a harvester. You know, you hardly could see a farmer using a cutlass and a hoe. And of course, the farmer also has everything on the farm, you know, from threshing machines that can process whatever and of course bag it effectively for him. And because of this conflict of the development of the forces of production has led to the kind of crisis we face today. And I say that, for instance, countries like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and of course India, these countries have been able to ranch their cattle. And from the ranching economy, the ranch economy produces large economies of scale that complements a farming economy. Where there's industrialization, you know, ranching complements in the sense that the same end products of the ranching economy, take for instance the dung, the bones, and etc., can be processed into manure that can now be applied on the farm. And so therefore it is complementary. It's not an object of conflict. But because we're still backward in our use of the forces of production, that is why we experience this kind of conflict that sometimes we see. There's no conflict, as a matter of fact, between herdsmen and farmers. If and given that that society is industrialized and uses, you know, developed forces of production, is that of the conspiracy of the political elites, the Fulani political class and the Tea political class. And it is at two levels, very quickly, at two levels. I say, one, since independence, the Tea political elites have always been in partnership with the Fulani political elites in the political process of Nigeria. Politics itself suggests that there must be patrons and clients in the political process, in political formations. Whenever political parties are formed, majority ethnic groups will always reach out to minority ethnic groups in order to form a partnership of politicians. And this sometimes produces the kind of conflict that we see in our society, most especially in the herdsmen and farmers crisis in Nigeria, and of course what we're beginning to see in Benue State. I will give you some examples. For instance, when George Akume was the governor of Benue State, for those of you who are concerned with the political terrain of Benue State, it was George Akume who brought in Atiku Abubakar and took him to the Tea Traditional Council and gave him the title of the second model of tea politics. This shows a strong alliance between the Fulani ruling class and the Tea political class. However, what George Akume did not understand or could not see very far was the political implications of this kind of decision, where you bring in a Fulani elite and you make him the Zegemule of tea, the big shelter of the tea people. And I recall that recently, in the recent crisis in Benue State, the first one in January in Guma, one time Repoyo Pulonono had to comment on this. We see that later by and by. When he now appealed to Atiku Abubakar to end the genocide in the Tea nation. For instance, again, when Gabriel Suswan was the governor of Benue State, Governor Suswan went into a conscious agreement with emirs across northern Nigeria that Goodluck Jonathan paid billions of naira to all states in Nigeria to establish grazing reserves in their states. Benue State also got a share of that money. But this is also politics, and that is what sometimes where politics can take us. Now, when you look at this kind of partnership and alliances, You can now understand the implication on the kind of conflict we have. The second level is that most politicians, in order to keep you working, your mind working, and to take your attention away, they create a crisis for you. And of course, use you as the cannon fodder to fuel the crisis. So that while you're busy fighting and killing each other, you forget the fact that they've taken your money. 2, whenever there are periodic elections, anytime elections are around the corner, somehow the herdsmen crisis will begin. And therefore, of course, we need to be very careful, like I keep saying, that we really need to define this herdsmen. Is it the political herdsmen, or the killer herdsmen? Comes in at a point that you have to be very careful in drawing a line, where the herdsmen crisis actually is going. That is one theoretical position. And that conspiracy is very strong and very, very vital. And I say it again, another theoretical position is that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, when Barack Obama became the president of the United States of America, it was Barack Obama who created a United States military command for Africa. Before the Obama era, the military commands in the world were in Asia, were in Europe, some parts of South America, in the far Pacific, etc. But Barack Obama who said that no, we must create an African command, military command, to police Africa in times of emergency. And under the Barack administration, what you call the militants, the ISIS were recruited, were trained, and of course were armed. And what Barack Obama had wanted to achieve was to make sure that in the Arab world, not Africa, regimes that were hostile, to Western ideology were all brought down and raised to the ground. And what followed with the creation of the ISIS was the war in Syria, was the war in Iraq, the war in Yemen, the war in Libya, partially in Egypt, and partially also in Tunisia. At the end of the day, there was an Arab Spring in which all of North Africa was brought down in a tumult. And Islamic groups, began to emerge, with large-scale and medium-scale weapons, and carry them out, further into sub-Saharan Africa. And eventually, of course, some leaders were killed in the process. In West Africa, for instance, nomadic groups like the Tuaregs and the Berbers created political enclaves which they controlled. In Mali, for instance, they created an enclave in which the university that existed at Timbuktu, which was the center of learning in the ancient world, was destroyed by the ISIS. The same thing also in Niger. France responded immediately and was able to drive out the ISIS. But the ISIS continued to expand, their frontiers into countries like Cameroon and Nigeria. And I say in this paper that is what led to the formation and the beginning, of Boko Haram in Nigeria, in the northeast, and of course across Nigeria. Now let's take a look at the Fulani and the Tea people in history quickly in terms of relationship. I say the Tea and the Fulanis, there has always been a relationship between the two groups. There's no doubt about it. But in my paper, I have cautioned that we must guard against stereotypes. There's one stereotype I have discovered that the Tea people use often, that the Fulanis gave the Tea cows, and the Tea ate those cows. And when the Fulanis asked, the Tea responded by saying, Mochi. Listen, this is a stereotype. There's nothing like Mochi in the Fulani language. Mochi is a Juku derivation, which means mid-sea. It's the Jukus who refer to the Tea as mid-sea. And of course, the aberration of that is mochi. And what it means in the Jukun language means stranger. So, there is no way that the Fulanis could have referred to the Tea people, as stranger in the Jukun language. So historically, there is no cow debt anywhere. This whole idea that we owe the Fulanis a cow debt is as historical misleading. I recall when one time Poyo Pulonogo had to lead the delegation to the Sokoto Caliphate, that was last year or the year before last year, I told him that, sir, this delegation, on one hand, I accept it because these are diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis. But on the other hand, there is nothing in our history that shows that we munchi Fulani cows. That you're taking a journey as far as the Sokoto Caliphate to return the cows that were eaten by the Tea people. Well, one time they took cows to the Sokoto Caliphate. But we are all living witnesses of what began to happen January 2018. If the cows were paid by the cow that were paid by, why has this crisis persisted? I hope that is understood. Now I say from the writing of scholars, the Tea people were the first in the Benue Valley before the Fulani. As a matter of fact, by the 14th century, when the Tea people were already here, the Fulanis were still at the Futajalos, the foot of the Futajalos in Senegal. Just in the 15th century, this is in the history books, that the Fulani herdsmen began to expand across the Hausa states in the far north. There was not a single Fulani person here. So these are here. That grazing routes and grazing reserves had existed here of historical times. Our Tea society was under Fulani control and domination is completely false. By 1803, Usman Danfodio had launched a jihad with the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate. That was the beginning of the Fulani presence in what we call modern-day Nigeria. The Tea people have been here for a long time. But the unfortunate thing is that the Tea people were able to build imperial structures that will help them fight the Fulanis in the colonial era. Now, the coming of British colonialism, the 20th century, upset the balance of power between the Fulanis and the Tea. The Tea, who were once autonomous and independent, now came under what was referred to as the Northern region. And under the indirect rule system, the Fulanis had the control of the Northern region. So it was the beginning of the Tea being subservient to the Fulanis. So colonialism acted as a game changer. The Tea now came under the control of the Fulanis, and of course for the first time, the Tea have to now, in one way or the other, have to go into partnership with the Fulanis in order to earn their living. Now I say that during the First Republic, 1960 to 1965, in the Tea riots, most of you were not born, so you won't understand what the Tea riots were. The Tea riots was a major struggle of the Tea people against Fulani domination. J.S. Taka, who led that struggle in the United Middle Belt Congress, did so with the hope that Tea land was going to be emancipated from the control of the Fulanis. In the First Republic, Professor Okai is here. Almost all the leading politicians in Tea land in the First Republic, in one way or the other, were converted to Islam. And I can give you some name. The greatest here in Maseland, which we all know, is Lushaka Anja. Another one is Takaran Oradi. These people were converted to Islam. The same thing also with traditional rulers, the district heads and the district chiefs. Even the Toti, had to be turbaned. The turban had to be turbaned like an emir. For the Toti to be accepted in the Northern House of Chiefs. These were gradual process, that were being carried out to enslave the Tea population and of course bring it under, the control, of the Fulanis. Then by the 1980s, Babangida took Nigeria into the Organization of Islamic Countries. There was resistance and protest. However, there was an Abuja Congress or conference of the World Congress of Islam in Nigeria. And at the end of that Congress, there was an Abuja Declaration that I wish we would go through. We don't have time for that. But that major declaration said, in the military and as well as in the political process of Nigeria, to ensure that only Muslims will control the top command of the military and as well as the politics of Nigeria. Between 1980s and 1990s, that process was carried out in the military. Because T people were afraid of carrying out a coup or a coup d'etat, and several T soldiers were killed. Some of the brilliant team officers were eliminated in the process. So there was a gradual process of phasing out the team from the top command of the military and repositioning the control of the military in the hand of the Fulani political class. And of course, in recent times, they have been able to perfect that. You know it, and I know it. So Herdsmen crisis have been here with us for quite some time. And I want us to get some things very quickly as we move to the last segment of this discussion. That first and foremost, that the Fulanis have planted structures over time. Nomadic education, and of course that began in the 1920s. Billions of nairas have been sunk into nomadic education. The creation of Neyeti Allah, powerful organization, that over time this organization has been able to mobilize billions and billions of naira, and also to recruit and to train, a Fulani militia to carry out a genocide. I want also to know also there has been the institutionalization of ethnic Fulanis in Nigeria over time, and this is the kind of battle that we're up against that is beginning to stare us in the face in what we now call the Herdsmen crisis in Benue State. Of course, this crisis are widespread in Benue State in Kuma local government, Logo local government, Gwe West and Gwe East. In Gwe East, for instance, we know that they have been invaded by Hibin before, that is a Yono. They have been invaded, Agana, that is also a Yono. Of course, in recent times where they invaded Aya, Ibadan, Council Ward. And I will crave your indulgence to say that may we observe just a 1 minute silence for the Reverend Fathers and the people who were killed in the genocide attack at Aya and Balon. May God keep their souls in Jesus' name. Amen. You can take your seats. Now, what is the impact on massive land? This is the last thing we're going to look at. What is the impact of these attacks on massive land? Because that is what National Association of Master Students asked me to do. I said the first impact is that it has led to the destruction of the farming economy in massive land. The farming economy has been destroyed, and the population of farmers displaced, and this has resulted to high rates of unemployment and also has created internally displaced camps in team society. This is one of the fundamental impact of the Herdsmen invasion on massive society. We know that agriculture the farming economy accounts for about 60% of the employment needs of our people in the rural areas.